Hello everyone, this is Crota giving you a shoutcast between Silver and Slush here on the Naga Caverns with a lot of weird doodads and weird templates. So, well, this does look a little bit interesting as the Zerg creep hiding the weird artifacts on this map here, but we have Slush spawning as the red Zerg player over here on the south side of the map. Meanwhile, we have Silver spawning over here on the north side of the map as the blue Terran. This was a BattleNet game, I believe, taken from the American or North America realm. So I'm really curious to see how the American players have been playing. I've been casting a lot of European and Asian play, and now coming back to my home turf and casting some American games. Hopefully this game will represent America well. Back over here, Slush taking a look, now training up an Overlord, and we see a very early barracks. So we're having a 10 racks followed by most likely what's going to be this is a 9 racks. So 9 racks followed by some sort of supply depot in just a moment. No, now just continuing the train, not throwing down that supply depot just quite yet. So I'm not 100% sure what exactly the tactic of Silver is. Silver now throwing down a supply depot here, does not have a refinery. This replay, I did not download this replay from SC307.com, but yeah, go ahead and Slush promoting this website. Yeah, go ahead and check out that website. Back over here, Slush now moving out with this Overlord, and you see that there is just this weird doodad and just artifacts on the map. Hopefully it doesn't get too distracting as that drone now moving out across the map will not be able to get into the base. So nicely done by Silver. Silver now getting a Marine over here will be able to start firing back, getting a very, very early orbital command. So I guess the whole entire tactic was that Silver wanted to get that earlier orbital command, and that's what's going to keep him up in the economic game. You can see a difference, 14 harvesters versus 11, but now with this mule in play, it will even it out a little bit further. However, Slush is already mining off of 3 gas. So Slush opened up with an extractor before a spawning pool, should be able to get up to about 100 gas just as this spawning pool completes. Over here, we now see an Overlord. That Marine should just be able to sit right here, and a second Marine now going to be able to activate the Naga Watchtower. So what happens normally is one Marine activates the Naga Watchtower to gain sight. A second Marine is there to start shooting as well, and now those 2 Marines will be able to take down this early Overlord coming in from Slush. Slush now will be hurting for quite some time as that Overlord now back over here needs to reactivate that Naga Watchtower to gain sight. Overlord now trying to suicide its way off to the north to perhaps to get some sight information, but down it's going to go down to 16 hit points, and there it is. Back over here, we already see some double bunkers now being thrown in. So drones now trying to deal damage towards over here. Zerglings coming back. Is this SCV going to be able to repair it in time? And yeah, and now starting to repair. There are no Marines are coming over, but that will not be able to finish that just in time as these Zerglings now may be able to catch some of these Marines as they transition back home. So now this very, very early aggression tactic not going to be enough. However, Silver or Slush is now seeing that 23/26 being forced to train an additional Overlord. However, an SCV now joining in on this fight. Marines trying to fight back, trying to use this cliff to their advantage, and now able to finish off the rest of those units. So 400 resources lost for Silver compared to Slush's 250. That one bunker getting taken down that early was just absolutely critical. That drone pulling off in order to get that extra additional damage from that Zergling was absolutely critical. Back over here, we now see some Hellions being trained up, and Silver going for a very fast command center as well. So this command center currently at 24/27, going for a faster command center in order to try to keep up in this economic game. We'll be able to get 1 Hellion, perhaps even 2 Hellions, to try to handle this very, very aggressive Zergling with that metabolic boost. These speed things may be able to just try to run in. 1 Hellion going to get caught in open field. That supply depot, that Hellion's going to have a very, very bad day. Going to sit right there, and now with that Marine support may be able to come back inside and perhaps try to regain that composure. So 1 Hellion sitting here will be able to protect this expansion. We do have some Zerglings activating this Naga Watchtower as an Overlord now coming in, flying through the north side, making sure that there is no expansion attempt. However, the command center now nearing completion. We do see the factory, and now we also see Vikings being trained. So now transitioning into Vikings. Vikings will start Overlord hunting in just a moment, as we may start to see more and more SCVs being trained as well. Currently, Silver is behind in the harvester count, 19 to 23, opting to upgrade to an orbital command first. to get that additional energy. Back over here, we do see Marines now positioned throughout this base. The army of silver, a decent size, mainly because of these 3 Vikings and now 3 Hellions and now 1 Viking out on the move looking for some Overlord blood. That these Overlords will get shot down very quickly. Only takes 8 rounds of attack, so 16 game seconds in order for a Viking to shoot down and take down one Overlord. I believe that turns out to be about 11 or 12 and a half seconds. This Viking, however, may not see this Overlord hiding over here, and now any Overlord that is hiding next to a Queen should be fairly well protected. However, why isn't this creep? Okay, the creep finally expanding over here. Now Viking now going to start shooting at these Overlords, trying to use that shoot and move attack ability. A second Queen now coming in as well. Queens have an anti-air attack range of 7. So those needle vines or those needle spines able to deal a significant amount of damage. Sorry, acid spines able to deal a significant amount of damage. However, the Hydralisk den has already been trained, and we should be seeing 5 Hydralisks now being trained up as well. Zerglings now making their way over. Viking going to end up suiciding into this base. No, not going to suicide into this base as this Viking pulling back. Zerglings ready to get underneath that Viking just in case it tries to land. However, now 4 Hellions in one medevac going to be dropped off over here. So these Hellions do not have the Infernal Pre-Igniter research, but with 4 of them, they will be able to 1 round of attack and take down some units. We do see these units over here, and now those Hellions trying to get a couple quick drone kills. However, the Hydralisk on that creep moving much more quickly than they would off, and down goes another Hellion. So that Hellion being forced to pull back, and Silver not doing too well. We do have 1 Overlord that will get shot down by this Viking over here. So down goes this Overlord. We now have that medevac trying to pull back, now getting next to this, high ground. However, these 2 Hydralisks may be able to shoot down this medevac. Medevac down to 51 hit points, down to 40. Will it be able to escape? Movement speed of 2.75, just slightly faster. 1 Zergling and 1 Hydralisk able to take down this last Hellion over here. And now the army of silver significantly smaller. We do have a Viking now in ground mode in order to try to protect against these Zerglings and these Hydralisks over here. Marines now making their way over as well. A mule joining in on that fight, even though it doesn't have a particle cutter, or a fusion cutter in order to deal even 5 damage. As these Marines and Vikings continue to push out, more Marines need to come in and engage. Hydralisk now coming into position as well. Siege tank now in siege mode, and those Hydralisks are going to be able to start dealing that damage and taking down that 1 siege tank. That siege tank, however, able to get off 1 splash attack, dealing 50 damage towards that Hydralisk because this is patch 1.03. Back over here, Viking now on that ground mode. Hellion now making its way out, perhaps to try to deal some damage towards this this expansion over here. Now fighting against the Zergling. Zergling able to get off a couple quick hits, and down goes, or Hellion now down to 50 hit points, so taking a significant amount of damage before finishing off that 1 Zergling. And now that Hellion deciding to pull back once again, does not want to engage against any of these Hydralisks, and now Slush taking up an expansion on this high ground over here at the 9 o'clock position. We do see an SCV now training, repairing some of these. Also a Raven in the air. That Raven, I do not see Seeker missiles being researched, so maybe they're just to stop any burrow action, and to get a point defense drone, a PDD, in order to intercept the needle spines of those Hydralisks. However, the Raven with those needle spine, the Raven with that point defense drone versus the Hydralisk have a very, very fast attack speed at 0.83. So that 0.83 attack speed is it 0.83 or 0.86? That's actually of 3. So yeah, 0.83 actually fires a little bit faster than a Marine. So that Marine, it does fire faster than the Marine when it's not in stim mode. Back over here, hatchery nearing completion at 75, 3/4 of the way done. As these Roaches now joining in on this army, Roaches with that additional +1 armor, able to take a lot of a beating from these Marines. We now see Silver maybe trying to throw down an expansion. No, not throwing an expansion as he moves out with these Marines. We do see the combat shield and the level 1 weapons upgrade. 4 Marines now being trained as another command center being built over here. Now moving out, we do see a couple of drones, and those drones are being caught in transition, quickly revealing that there is an expansion over here on the top left. That's going to be a very, very bad sign. However, Infestors now trying to come in and then getting off a nice fungal growth. All of these Marines and the Silver's army just going to get torn apart by the acid saliva and all of these needle spines. One thing to remember is that the Roach's acid saliva is not intercepted by a point defense drone. So that's why that siege tank was taken down so quickly. Infestors quickly getting a decent amount of infestors in order to push back. Some of those infestors were taken down, but one infestor enough, and now we see some drones being transferred over here. Roaches standing close by, and now Hydralisk over here. Army of Slush sitting at 1675 versus 954 silver, up to 1100. Production-wise, we do see a neural parasite now being researched, just in case silver goes for any sort of Thor play. Silver now training off of 2 racks, each with a reactor. That combat shield should be completed. Now, just getting completed, and now getting that concussive shell research as well. One command center in the air. Not quite sure why it's not on the ground to upgrade to an orbital command as these Marines now moving out. We do see some spine crawlers now in position to act as a protection. And now in comes that medevac. The medevac may try to do a drop, but that's going to be a very, very bad sign as these spine crawlers are going to be completed. And now dropping into the backside of that base. Marines now going to make their way. Marines are going to be able to simply deny this expansion. However, Roaches now coming in, and Roaches coming in and simply taking down so many of those units, and a fungal growth and a medevac with 4 Marines shot out of the sky, and Silver going ha. Infestor play just so powerful, being able to stop any units from being retreating, forcing their movement speed down to 0. We do have an upgrade to a planetary fortress, which was the reason why Silver did not upgrade it to an orbital command earlier. Now, as with the planetary fortress, you do get an additional 2 armor compared to a command center or an orbital command. And you can increase that even further if you have an engineering bay. The engineering bay with that extra durable armor gets an additional 2 armor, so then that command center can have essentially 5 armor, reducing the amount of damage to from an unupgraded Zergling essentially to less than 1, I believe. I'm not exactly sure how attacks work in StarCraft 2 when armor equals damage. Back over here, we have one infestor hanging around by this Naga watchtower, does not know that there is that expansion already in position, and now now a sensor tower being brought into play. So Silver, being the proper Terran player, slowly going to start expanding into his opponent's location here. The main mineral patches have started to be mined out, down to 7 mineral patches here, as now the Roaches have cleared out this over here. There is a decent amount of infestors, but I'm kind of surprised that we don't have Burrow being researched. Burrow would be absolutely critical as well in order to hide some of those infestors. Infestors are a very, very expensive unit, and or a very, very gas-intensive unit, and you kind of want to protect them. Kind of as important as Ghost with cloaking. Over here, Roaches and Hydralisk now continuing to be masked up, as we see Slush at a 3675 versus a 3350. Planetary Fortress continuing to train up more and more SCVs, as now these siege tanks and medevacs in the air are going to just move out very slowly. Stay tuned for part 2 of this replay between Silver and Slush here in the Naga Caverns.